Hey, this is Tom with Buncombe Shinola. You know, I thought today it'd be fun to talk about the 40th anniversary of my first Ramones show, November 14th in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the University of New Mexico Sub-Ballroom venue. And just a couple days later, the Ramones landed in Hollywood to play one of their most infamous shows. And hopefully this video will be out somewhere in between the anniversary of these two shows. And I wanted to talk about that a little too. It's definitely an interesting tale. Let's see, I would have been a sophomore in high school, I think, at this point. Let's see, 14 or 15 or something. I was pretty late. This is Richie era. They're touring on Too Tough to Die. I was pretty late getting into the Ramones, really. I mean, I guess pretty good for someone my age. I sort of remember seeing Rock and Roll High School on late night TV when I was pretty young. I remember holding End of a Century in my hands at the record store in the mall, but I didn't take it. I came close, but for all their later grumbling about lack of representation on MTV. Initially, the Ramones were on MTV quite a bit. The first Rock and Roll High School, and do you remember Rock and Roll Radio? And certainly later, Psychotherapy. I mean, frankly, they seemed kind of at the forefront of like indie bands that were putting out exceptional videos. Little did we know that that was sort of the end of like their peak video. I mean, past that, all of the videos were nowhere near as strong in quality. I would argue that they did not have another great video promotional clip until I Don't Want to Grow Up. But, you know, I would say, you know, they were a presence in the early days of MTV where they had basically almost nothing to, you know, air, so they were happy to throw up anything on the channel that they could. I mean, the Ramones would segue right into Juice Newton. I can tell you Juice Newton was on MTV a lot in the early days. But anyway, so fast forward a couple of years later, my friends and I, you know, we're probably into like, you know, predominantly like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and my buds were into Led Zeppelin, AC/DC. Of course, my first love was Kiss, but I was probably getting into the Kinks. But we're at it's a couple years later, different mall, different city. We're at the record store, and at one point, there was quite a proliferation of very cheaply priced Ramones cassettes inundating the market. Now, I'm not sure if this was right after Subterranean Jungle came out, basically. They had that what was basically a relatively new release selling for $1.99. It might have even been 99 cents. But I mean, these and other ones which would notably say made in Spain or made in Italy. A friend at a record store later told me that was code words for this is a bootleg that was made in nearby, you know, like Clovis. But it was, for a little while, it was really easy to buy cheap Ramones cassettes. I hadn't done it yet, but this one was just too cheap for me to say no to. And even at this meager price, my friends were like chiding me because they'd recently seen the video for Time Has Come Today and not thought very much of it. And of course, that was not a very representational video song for them to push from one of their records. But as they were mocking me in the back seat of my folks' cars, we were getting back to where we were going, I said out loud, wouldn't it be funny if this record was really great and we all got into punk rock? Which was met with jeers and groans and whatever, Tom, fuck you, right? But indeed, that was what happened. It was Subterranean Jungle. We listened to it. We all loved it. I still love it to this day. Eventually my best friends, Brock, he definitely led the way on the Heartbreakers and the Clash. Matt was really into the Pistols and the Damned. I might have got the Buzzcocks, you know. The Subterranean Jungle LP is so pivotal to me that it has love notes from one of my first girlfriends still scrawled on the inner sleeve lyric sheet from when I let her borrow it. A little bit of time later, it is post Too Tough to Die. November 1984, finally, I'm going to get to see the Ramones for the first time. I think they had played Albuquerque one time previously, as well as misidentifying Richie. One of the articles in the paper mentions that. I'd have to double-check Monty's book. I think they might have played Las Cruces once as well. There were a couple of articles in the Albuquerque weeklies, definitely with the UNM paper as well. I have those saved. They were definitely pushing the show pretty well. There was an in-store at a record store that I did not get to town in time to attend. By the way, the amazing flyer was by R.K. Sloan, a well-known underground artist from Albuquerque. I was honored to just meet him a few times, but he did do quite a few LP sleeves for a band I was in called 27 Devils Joking. Of course, he also did other Albuquerque bands. Some of his work was used on Rocky Erickson releases from Texas as well. He was also an amazing painter, sculptor. I suppose at this point his most mainstream, widely known work was for some of the latter-day Guns N' Roses designs, but he's no longer with us, and I fear right now his website is also not up. I don't know what's up with that. Hopefully it'll pop back up here. But do look him up, R.K. Sloan. He was an absolute genius and a master of sick, demented imagery. Visiting his home was one of the most surreal, mystical experiences of my life. There was also a secondary flyer, by the way, that was produced by Sloan's wife, which is pretty cool as well. So we're in Santa Fe, about an hour and a half away. Me and a couple other of my nerd friends are getting a ride with my mom. There's probably like 6 or 7 of us in the car. My sister, too. She is driving us to Albuquerque to drop us off to the show and then sit and wait for us to get out. So incredibly uncool, right? We're really excited about the show. We're beside ourselves. So we arrive. I've never really been to a big punk show, and I'd never set foot on a university, that's for sure. We get down there. It's sort of near the student union, like, where you eat, I guess. I honestly still don't really know. I didn't realize there were so many punk rockers in the area, really. There was hundreds. I'm pretty sure the capacity of the venue was somewhere between 500 and 1,000. But the place was packed, and people were looking tough. And it's pretty intimidating, really. And it was kind of astonishing to walk in and, they're blasting, like Dead Kennedys over the PA, and the opening band starts. They're called the Crawling Walls. They were sort of like garage rock revivalists. They're pretty decent, pretty solid. Definitely, they drew the biggest applause for covering 96 Tears towards the end of their set. I'm noticing that the only barrier they have in front of the stage is, your basic wooden folding tables, which are admittedly sturdier than what you might get from like Office Depot right now. But still, it's just folded wooden tables. And I can see that they've got a number of guys, clearly probable football team participants, dressed in identical security wear, getting ready to line up behind the tables. Anyone who's seen the Ramones knows they had like a pretty massive PA they lugged around with them, just a wall of speakers, and I just don't know what to expect. And the band starts, and it is genuinely kind of terrifying. And, it was a big pit of moshing, which may seem less out of the ordinary now, but certainly I had never seen a pit that size in real life. In fact, I'd probably only seen a pit that big on film like once, maybe like that one Circle Jerk show that was like flying around from that one dock for a little while. But it was really, really alarming, especially to like a scrawny little, glasses wearing dork like me. We're pretty close to the front. We were right in front of Dee Dee, and I was right by my sis, and she got clocked in the head with either, a punk's boot, or it might have just been like a security guy being a jerk, and at this point in Dee Dee's stage persona, he did a lot of he would scrunch up his face, really serious, and he would sweat was getting in his eyes. It was definitely not jumping around It's Alive Dee Dee. It was sweating, spiky hair, grimacing, He was really funny. And once the show starts, we're a couple songs in, and the tables are not going to hold. And these football jock guys, they're There were a lot more than I thought they were, but I mean, I want to say that there was probably between 10 and 20 big guys with their back up against the stage trying to hold up the tables for dear life. I'll never forget the sight. The mosh pit was so ferocious and the crowd was just so out of hand. I'm certain that I recognized a look of genuine, concern in the face of Dee Dee and Johnny occasionally. But they just blasted through the set. Oh, you can't. I mean, there were a couple of really awesome curveballs. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the band. I'm really familiar with a bunch of their bootlegs. So you sort of get used to which songs are going to be in the set. But stuff you just didn't think was going to be coming, like this was pretty late for Let's Dance. This was pretty late for Susie. This was pretty late for California Sun. They did I'm Affected, which we thought was very odd. Some stuff from the new record. Of course, they did Warthog, but they also did Danger Zone pretty early in the show, which was, I remember, pretty dazzling. At this point, Johnny and Dee Dee had it timed pretty well with Arturo, where at significant points they would get on their little risers and the spotlights would blast right at pertinent points, like, for instance, and you flipped your lid in Danger Zone, which was just incredible, man. And again, I'm sure any number of people could tell you the same thing. Just the barrage of blocks of songs with no pauses in between other than the count, is just incredible. And Richie, the third drummer, had been in the band for almost a year now, I think. He was totally locked in and totally, I mean, like they said, somehow they had gotten even faster. He was handling some of the background vocals. He actually took, it was actually up to him to sing the title word, Warthog, while Dee Dee just took the verse. We thought that was hilarious. One of the great curveballs was for the first encore, they included Highest Trails Above from Subterranean Jungle, one of my favorite Underdog Ramones songs. I couldn't believe they were doing something so out of left field. And unfortunately for the very last encore, they tried to work Howling at the Moon into the set, which, probably, in a career that had more than a few dubious strategies employed, in the heavy punk rock comeback record that was Too Tough to Die, to decide that they were going to make the single off of it, this sort of like keyboard-driven, new wave, MTV-friendly, Eurythmics guy-produced song. The song they were going to push was really not wise. And it's a little better live. I'm sure a lot of people here have heard it in bootlegs, but definitely it wasn't really flying that way either, But the pit, I'm telling you. I've never been able to remember the Ramones live reviewer who said this great quote, conveyed it perfectly. Enjoying the show became secondary to surviving it. I would never dare jump in. I'd like to think maybe I tried to get in there once or twice, but I don't want to kid myself. I probably didn't. I was pretty focused on, the Ramones were already my favorite band, and I just couldn't believe to just be seeing Joey up there. And as I mentioned on the Beat on the Brat video, he walked out with a baseball bat, and he had sort of like heavy metal, those glove things that you would get at shops, They're all wearing a little bit of black, I think. It was either jeans and black t-shirts or all black. One of the first shows I saw in my life that really did blow me away, the first show I ever saw was Kiss, which was amazing, but unfortunately I was a really little kid then. I saw him on Dynasty. So, Kiss fans know what I'm talking about. I also saw 80s comeback Kinks put on a really killer show in Albuquerque, but this was just a mind melter, man. It was just a mind melter. I've talked to any number of people who were at the show, including some of my best friends ever, Matt and Brock, my sister, had a crazy time too. People I would talk to were at the show that would later be in bands. Like, for instance, someone who was working that show that night was Eric from the band Elephant, which was sort of adjacent to the later grunge era resin record scene in Albuquerque. He was working that show, and he told me later that he actually got to hang out and, his words, party with Johnny a little bit. And I was like, what? That's astonishing, man. It's astonishing. But yeah, it's a great night of my life and a pivotal point, and I can't believe it's 40 years ago. Holy shit, I never thought I would be this fucking old. Damn, man. I got to see him a few more times, but it would always be latter era. did get to see Tommy solo as well, and CJ solo as well. I'm really psyched I did get to see Dee Dee in the band once, you know. But just a couple days later, and again, there's audio of this show. If anyone in Albuquerque wants to relive what the set sounded like, a couple nights later, they played the Hollywood Palladium. That would be the 17th of November. You've probably seen a photograph of the marquee. It's pretty famous. It was on Henry Rollins' book called Get in the Van, I think. But it was the Ramones with Black Flag, and also on the, not on the marquee, although they did appear in a bunch of the flyers, was the Minutemen. So yeah, a pretty astonishing fucking show. There's a famous pics of like Rollins and Johnny backstage with John Doe. Someone told me that they talked to Joey later, and he mentioned it as one of the most infamously memorable performances the band ever did. I only lived in LA for a little bit much later, but certainly was a strong anti-punk presence of feeling in the Los Angeles cop department. And there was it was a regular thing for gigs to get busted up, even legit gigs. Even legit gigs at legit clubs, cops would show up and just fuck with people, you know? I mean, I don't know what to say, you know? I guess a couple night or two before the Ramones show at the Palladium, PIL, Public Image Limited, played at the Olympic, which is that old boxing, wrestling arena. Can't remember exactly why a riot happened that night, but a riot did happen. I can't remember if it was like aesthetically related, but the cops were just getting used to making their presence felt at every big punk show. And this was a big punk show right after a riot. So to their astonishment and then subsequent horror, everyone who attended this Black Flag Ramones show walked out to a wall of riot police and helicopters spinning overhead. And they were sort of corralled, and anyone who got I guess the story goes, at the show earlier, a window or glass door had gotten busted, and a couple of people had gotten to the venue. And the police had been called, and they were ready to overreact for, do unto others first. They were ready to do that. Some people say they walked out, and their car was parked relatively nearby, and they just climbed on top and got out okay. Others say that the cops were swinging on every fucker that walked out the door. And it wasn't like, reactionary. The cops showed up for a pig riot, and that's what they threw. It was an anti-punk pig riot. And lots of people got hurt. Lots of people fled. Lots of people who tried to take photographs documenting what happened were beaten. It's not always easy for people now to kind of understand what it was like to be a punk back then, or what life was like in Reagan era, big cities. Although, here we are in 2024, I'm certain that I'm about to see some riot police pig action coming up here shortly. But yeah, it was just the sort of, I've having had the fortune to talk to a few people that were present, it was definitely a ritual passage of, what was already an intense scene to be a part of. And it's fascinating that this gig that's so pivotal to me is so close to this insane show, And to me, they were both insane shows. I don't know what it was like for the band to be tearing it up. Of course, they had a couple of albums with stunt producers where they were clearly trying to expand their potential bankability and their sonic, sort of like landscape and, what sort of different music they were. But with Subterranean Jungle and Too Tough to Die, they're like, okay, we're a punk band. There's a bunch of punks out there. We're going to go play some punk. And now they're like tearing it up across the country. And like, to my mind, the show I saw was almost a riot. But, just to know that the potential for a real riot was looming, it's just, those guys were too tough to die, man. They were fucking ready for anything, man. And it was an honor to catch them at a sort of late comeback peak. And years later, no one was more surprised than me when the schmancy edition of the Too Tough to Die record came out on CD. Of all the shows they could have pictured in the booklet, there was the R.K. Sloan flyer for the Albuquerque gig that was my first Ramones show. What a coincidence, man, but it was just a great feeling, a great feeling. History and shit, you know what I'm saying? This is Tom with Buncombe Shinola. Appreciate you hanging in and listening to me babble about this crazy recollection on this crazily far away anniversary. In the comments below, please tell me about your first Ramones show. I'd like to hear about it. And please, if you're so inclined, like the video, share it. To follow the channel, just subscribe. You know, it doesn't cost anything. Yet. As always, just thanks for watching. There's a bunch of other Ramones-related media on my channel, including a bunch of interviews with my photographer friend, LINDELL Tate, who shot them several times from 77 to 79. A bunch of other stuff, too. Please do check it out. And thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you again soon.